Hi, and welcome to the HR Link, where we have people-first conversations that centre around the humans inside your business. I'm Amy from Grounded HR, and my superpower lies in my ability to zero in on the individual to bring out their unique strengths, whilst helping values-led Australian businesses lead their teams with confidence and care. Here you'll find simple, people-first HR conversations and tips to take the stress out of managing your team and put the humans at the centre of everything. So let's jump in. Hello and welcome to another episode of People First Conversations. We are going to talk about one of the subjects that basically rules nearly all my conversations with small business owners, and that is compliance. It is usually the first place that a business will make contact with us, and it's usually because they're petrified. They're absolutely petrified of doing things wrong, of the risks associated like fines from Fair Work, and quite often they just don't know where to go to get the information, to set things up correctly, and I get it. You're not a specialist in this field. You have gone into business, like I've said before, in your specialty area, in your technical expertise, but you end up managing people and you need help with that. And that's what I'm here to do today, is to teach you a few things about where to go for the information, what to include, how to lower your risk, and all of those kind of things. You can't know where to find all that information. It comes over time, it comes with experience, it comes with seeking out expertise like legal or HR advice. And a lot of the time, I really do recommend you get in contact with someone right from the beginning. I've recently had a discovery call with a new client. She runs a yoga studio and she's been in business a very long time. But up till this point, she's actually only hired contractors. She's never had an employee of her own. I think she'd been in business well over 10 years, but she still felt very uneasy about where to go, how to find the right information, and how to set herself up correctly. So, what are the key pillars? Where are the areas that you should really focus on in the beginning when you're hiring your employees? There's 4 areas I'm going to go through today. This will probably be one of my longer episodes because I'm so passionate about it and it's really, really important. So the 4 areas are contracts and pay is obviously the first place to start. Policies and procedures. I want to talk a little bit about record keeping and documentation because I feel like this is where small business owners fall down a lot. And then the last one I want to talk about is performance and termination. Now, these kinds of things are super, super important. And so let's dive in. So contracts, let's start there. Please, please, please do not use the free templates that are available on Google. Contracts are really, really important. They really guide the fairness and the compliance of the relationship between you and your employee. You need to make sure that they are protecting yourself and your business. You have put your blood, sweat, and ideas into building the business that you have. It is really important that you protect that. And we're talking about restraints. We're talking about intellectual property. We're talking about like stealing clients and all of those kind of things. And your employees going out on their own after they've learnt your way. So we can't stop them from going out on their own, but we can protect what we've created, and that's what's our intellectual property. So I highly recommend that you have a contract that is written by an Australian lawyer that will stand up in court if it's ever challenged, and that includes the things that are important to your business. Now, it really depends on what industry you're in as to what is important to be included in there. If you're working in the NDIS space, then there's obviously qualifications and vaccinations and all kinds of things that need to be included in there. If you work in engineering or something like that, then there's heaps of OH&S and safety and compliance things that are really important. That's why it's important for you to work with somebody who is going to tailor that contract to you. The other piece of this is the pay piece. Now, you need to make sure that you've got a job description that describes the key tasks of the role, because then that helps us define what award you fall under and what the classification level is for that role. Now, every single role needs to be classified. You need to decide whether they're an award or a non-award position, and then you need to decide what classification. And those things have to actually be legally listed in their contract. So we should be using the tools like the PACT tool that the Fair Work provide us to find out what the right levels are, what the allowances are, what the penalty rates, all of those kind of things. The second area I want to talk about is policies and procedures. Now, you do not have to have every policy and procedure from the beginning, but it is something that I really recommend you dedicate time to along the way, because you don't want to be repeating yourself all the time. And the more employees you have, the more important it is for you to have policy and procedure that you can send people to, but also to help minimize your decision fatigue. Us as business owners are making decisions all the time. But if you've got policies and procedures in place where decisions have already been made and it's literally a procedure to follow, you're actually protecting your own mental health by having those. The third area I wanted to talk about is record keeping. Record keeping is super, super important, especially if there's a chance where people are going to ask for a promotion, ask for a pay rise, where they're potentially underperforming, or there's been a challenging situation, and whether that be a challenging situation between two employees or a challenging situation between an employee and a client. What does record keeping look like? Now, this can be different for all people. It really depends on the type of role and business you run. But I recommend keeping diary notes. Now, some people keep those in a written diary. Some people keep those as notes on their computer. Others put them in their calendar so that they're attached to a certain date. It really does depend on what works for you. You need to make it as easy as possible to do it on a daily basis, and you need to really collect the detail. Our brains are great, but they're not always great at recording and storing all the really finer details. If you have written those down and put them into a document that you can reference later if something reemerges, you're protecting your own mental health, you're protecting your own mental fatigue as a business owner, and you're actually helping your employees in the process. The other side is documentation. Now, so often I have clients who have made agreements verbally, who have discussed things and not followed them up with an email or any kind of writing. Quite often this means that there's no record. It's literally a verbal conversation between two people and there's no evidence to work from. So I really do recommend that you are documenting conversations and that you put those into writing after the conversation, because that is, again, if you ever move into a performance management process, which we're going to talk about next, you're not starting from day zero. You have a record of all the conversations you previously had, and you're already ahead because you've already set expectations and set boundaries in a previous conversation. Now, the last area I want to talk about is performance and termination. Performance is a two-part process. So there is the performance review process, and then there's the performance improvement process. So in the performance review process, we're actually talking about, it's actually much more future focused. Yes, we talk about how they've performed in the last 6 to 12 months. They get a chance to look at how they feel like they've performed in the last 6 to 12 months. And it's basically a record of how well they've been going. It's also an opportunity to identify where they're going next in your business. Now, this is super important in small business because quite often we're limited by where a person can go. Now, not everybody is trying to climb the career ladder. Some people are just really happy doing a job that they really enjoy in a place that they really love to work. So those are the conversations you need to have. Because as a business owner, if we're not identifying risks associated with people moving on, we are always going to be operating from a reactive space. And we really want to move to be really proactive. So these conversations are so important in identifying when a person is going to potentially be a flight risk from the business. Then we talk about the performance improvement piece. Now, I feel like this is a difficult conversation that so many business owners avoid. And the reason they avoid it is because they don't have a structure in place to have these conversations. Now, this leads back to that documentation and policies and procedures piece. If you've got the policy and procedure in place as to how we manage underperformance in our business, then there's no decision to be made. You literally just have to start the process. And it's also been transparent for the employees because they've seen it in your policy and procedure manual. When we're working through a performance improvement process, it really does depend on what kind of performance improvement we're working on as to how long the process is going to be. If it is something that a person can change about themselves in a day, then obviously the performance improvement process is going to be quite short. If it is a behavior that they've been doing for a very long time or something that is much harder to change, then the process is going to be slightly longer. This then feeds into if the performance does not improve or that there has been some serious misconduct within the business, that a termination might result. Now, terminations need to follow a certain process. If you are a small business, you need to reference the Small Business Fair Dismissal Code. This makes sure that you work through a really fair process before you terminate an employee. Termination needs to be done in the right way. Although small businesses in Australia do not fall under the unfair dismissal laws, there is still the general protections where an employee could make a claim. So you really need to make sure that you're terminating employees in the correct way for the right reasons and that it's a transparent process and it's well documented. Because if a claim is ever raised, you've got the documentation to prove that you have gone through a thorough process. So what have we got that can support this process? So I've got some freebies on my website. I will make sure that they are referenced in the show notes, but I have a contracts template which kind of takes you through all the sections that I recommend you have in your employment contract. Now, you can jump on our website, groundedhr.com.au, and grab that freebie. It will tell you whether your contracts are helping or hindering your business. I referenced the PACT tool previously. So the PACT tool is also available. It references the Fair Work Awards, the federal awards, and you will be able to work through a questionnaire kind of process that brings you to the right award and the right classification and the right information for pay and allowances and overtime, etc. Policies and procedures. Now, this is something that you need to work through and work what your business needs. I am a big believer of only having the policies and procedures that are legally required and that are required for your business. People won't read them if you have this huge, gigantic manual that does not apply to your business. So make sure that you are getting some assistance with that or working through. You could have a consult with someone like myself and we could absolutely just run through what policies I believe you need. Record keeping and documentation, make sure that you are keeping those records, and performance and termination. Now, we've actually got a pack on our website. It's called a performance improvement pack. It's for small business owners and it has a lot of the templates, etc., that you will use through this process. It has matrices, it has flow charts, and it's super affordable for you to be able to set up that performance improvement process. Now, I know that's a lot of information. Obviously, being in a podcast, you can listen back to it again, but I really want you to sleep better at night. I want to make sure that you and your business are protected and that you are treating your employees in a fair and reasonable way. I encourage you to build those ongoing structures, put those systems in place, and really work towards having a very, very thorough and compliant business. I hope you have a beautiful week and we will chat soon. Thanks for joining me today on the HR Link. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you hit subscribe or follow so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. We always aim to help you lead your team with confidence and care. And if you're ready to take the next step, I encourage you to explore the HR Link. It's your HR partner in your pocket. We provide practical, people-first support to Aussie Australian businesses. You'll find the link below. But up until next time, keep leading with clarity, care, and confidence, and we'll see you then.